Good morning. Wow. I've been up for over 2 hours again since a little after 2 o'clock. Actually going on 3 hours almost. I shouldn't say up, I should say awake. I didn't get up until 3:30, but I was awake long before that. Oh, the title for today is Boston Marathon Fiasco Exposed Quickly. Today is one of those days where I could go off in literally several different directions to talk about. A lot of info crossed my path in recent days, giving me a fairly broad perspective on what is happening in the collective, or, as Peter Van Runt called it in his amazing video, and I do include the link to that, yesterday, the world mind. Indeed, truths about our convoluted world are coming to light faster than ever, accompanied by the experience of greater pain by many. Several people sent me reports about the Boston Marathon event that indicate, once again, that this was yet another planned terrorist attack by elements within our own government. I know many will simply refuse to even look at the evidence, though I'm sure that will become more difficult to do as more people armed with cameras do the job mainstream media refuses to do. Alex Jones quickly reported the truth before the government actors could even hold their official press conference. And yes, I include that link in the blurb as well. Where to begin? Pain. No, let me start with Peter Van Runt. I watched his video twice yesterday, and there was a glitch that made it look like it ended several minutes before it actually did. Both numbers on the little YouTube little thing that tells you how far you've gone into the video, that both were, what was it, 1837 or 1737 or something. And they were both the same, and I thought the video was ended, but he ended in the middle of a sentence. And so I thought, well, I've got it. There's something wrong here. He wouldn't end a video in the middle of a sentence. So I went back and I listened to it again, and this time it continued the full 23 minutes or 24 minutes, or maybe it was even 25 minutes, whatever it was. But I watched it to the very end and then commented, and then I went back and I watched it a second time, which I don't even do with most of my own videos. The majority of them I watch once and that's it. But I went back and watched it twice, and how he got into where we moved from fear to anger to actually to compassion and love and to awakening. And I thought that was really good, and I totally concur that that is a process. Anger is actually a step in the right direction away from fear. So the collective is moving more and more away from fear, but as I'm becoming more and more aware and communicating with people around the world, so many people are hurting. So many people are hurting. Many of them with physical pain that's almost unbearable. I have several friends that are experiencing severe pain in their body. And I have to admit, I'm experiencing more pain than usual, but I don't usually experience a lot of pain in my physical body. So any discomfort is noticeable to me, although I don't tend to look at it as being something wrong. I tend to look at it as a necessary adjustment in my DNA, or an ascension symptom, whatever. I tend to look at everything as being ultimately for my good in the respect of physical ailments. Now, I'm not always that good at handling some other things. Emotional issues, for example, might be a little bit more challenging for me. And I did notice that a few people at least challenged me and said, Ron, you went into your ego when you blew your stack back at the man that blew his stack at you. You didn't maintain your cool, you blew it. Well, there's no such thing as blowing it. Again, Aristos, his commentary on yesterday's video was really interesting, as they always are. And if you're not on Facebook and you can't read it, and there's no link I can give you, to it. You'd have to go to Facebook and read my all the comments. There's much better comments from my perspective, always has been, on Facebook than there is on YouTube, although there's a lot of good comments on YouTube as well. But anyway, there's a lot of people experiencing pain is the point that I'm making, and that's part of the collective. That is part of the world mind that's going on, because we're all in this together. The dark and the light are in it together, and it's an interesting dance that's taking place. Now, as I said in the blurb, several people sent me the video that Alex Jones did, blowing the whistle that the Boston Marathon was proof that the Boston Marathon was another black op or psychological operation done by our wonderful cabal element of the government. I'm not saying all the government people are bad. I've never said that. But there is a very dark element within the United States government that makes the United States the greatest terrorist nation on the planet. I know they try to point the fingers at Islam and radical Muslims, but I'll bet you when the truth comes out that those radical Muslims are being financially and other ways supported by the very powers that be in the West. They're not doing this independently. The education that they're doing of hatred in Pakistan and in the East and in the Middle East, these things are all being done part of the United States education system of educating the world to create terror, because so many people in the United States depend on there being terror, depend on there being war, depend on there being upheavals all over the world, because they make money off of it. But that's being brought down by the OPPT and whatnot, and many other people that are working to expose the truth. And yet there are masses, literally masses of people that absolutely refuse to even look at anything that even suggests that our own government could be working against the American people. I mean, it's such a painful thought to even consider that it might be true that they don't even want to look at any evidence. But I did watch the Alex Jones video and actually other videos that are also exposing it. We have reporters now that are just ordinary people, armed, as I said, with cameras and a little bit of common sense, and they can analyze and see that these are sets. That's many of the pictures that we see that show the tattered clothing and everything. And there's no, in one case, it showed I think it was a lady with her pants all torn to shreds and everything, but there were no wounds on her legs. There were not a visible wound at all. So the makeup people didn't do a very good job on that one. Of course, another one, there was a very good makeup job. But it's makeup. It's staged events. And when they stage an event in a highly populated public place where people are armed with cell phone cameras, oops, they can't confiscate all the evidence. It's just too much evidence. And Alex Jones blew the whistle before they were even able to hold a news conference about the arrest. They had announced that they had arrested the guy, and they had him in custody, and they actually closed down the courtroom where he was supposedly being held. But I don't know who the patsy was this time, but they always have a patsy, somebody that's usually been a mind-controlled person, somebody that's been under MK Ultra, and they've been working with the government in a mind control thing. These are not lone gunmen. These are not isolated events. These are very highly planned events with staged actors. And again, one of the ladies that was killed in the Boston Marathon was also one of the teachers that was killed at Sandy Hook. Figure that one out. And she was also the attorney for the defendant. Was that in the Colorado shooting? The curly redheaded guy. Or the one with all the color in his hair. Anyway, these are staged events, folks. And sooner or later, the world is going to get it. And the government, there's people in our government that are really, really sick and really crying out for help. And they're being really, really, really stupid because people are catching on faster than they want them to. We know. Those of us that know that it's the government behind all of these things. I know that's far-fetched for those of you that don't want to believe that, but it's the truth, and it's going to come out. We have such a difficult time as humans breaking out of our cultural conditioning and breaking out of our slave mentality. On the American Kabuki thing that I read earlier, who was it that wrote that? Oh God, I think what was this? I'm so bad remembering names sometimes. Let me just see. Let me see. I don't see. All right, I found the article, but I'm not seeing his name. And he's one of my friends on Facebook. That's awful that I don't remember. He's one of the guys that's on Lisa Harrison's thing. He's the one that lives in San Diego, and he's part of the American Kabuki team. But anyway, he wrote an article and reminded me about the story from the Exodus in the Bible, where the Israelites, I mean, when Moses said, "I'm going to deliver you," or God told Moses to deliver his people, Moses told them, and when Moses started dealing with the Pharaoh, the situation actually got worse. It didn't get better; it got worse, and the people really rebelled because they were so comfortable in their slave mentality that they would have stayed there had it not been for Moses and divine deliverance and stuff like that. But they murmured and complained about Moses all along, just like people complain about the OPPT. And that was the point that, it was Brian, that's his name. He's the one, I believe, that wrote the article. But in any case, the people didn't want to leave Egypt, but they ended up leaving Egypt through the Red Sea with the treasure of the Egyptians. They ended up with the treasure of the Egyptians. So all the wealth, much of the wealth of Egypt came out of Egypt with the Israelites in that biblical story. And Brian is drawing our attention to the fact that that's what's happening with the OPPT. The elite that are getting really careless with their actions, and they're getting their cover is being blown for people that want to pay attention anyway. Their cover is being blown, and the world is going to end up with all of the wealth that they have confiscated from the people, this elite establishment. Now, the elite are not necessarily going to be drowned in the Red Sea, maybe figuratively, but probably not literally. The situation is going to be addressed, and justice is going to happen. Now, there's people that still believe that there's no such thing as right and wrong. We talked about that yesterday in the Mystics in Training class when we were reading the Seed of the Soul, the book by Gary Zukav, and the book on karma. We finished the chapter on karma yesterday, and there was a lot of interesting discussion about right and wrong and about judgment. And let me say something about judgment, folks. To judge something as being wrong is sane. I mean, it's a sane thing to do because there are things in the world that are plainly wrong, plainly evil. And to deny that is plainly insane from my perspective. Now, there's a difference. I make a strong distinction between judgment and condemnation. Thou shalt not condemn is probably a more accurate spiritual dictum, if you will, a dogma, a belief. Thou shalt not condemn, because the soul is always innocent, even if the personality or the individual having the human experience is playing a dark role. The dark role may be evil, but the soul that's allowing that part of itself to play that dark role is innocent. And so you never condemn. Condemning means you're condemning the soul. But judging means you're assessing and evaluating the action as being against life. It's against life because it violates the main rule of life, that everyone's free will ends where the next person's free will begins, and to violate another's free will is always an evil. It's always wrong. That was something that I expressed in several different ways during the discussion in yesterday's class. But this whole world thing is blowing up. The world mind is being exposed. The shadow elements are coming to the surface. Many people are hurting in various ways because of all of this awakening, because of all this revelation, if you will. This is the apocalypse, which is the unveiling of all the things that have been hidden. And it's going to continue until the whole earth flowers in a beautiful renaissance, until the whole planet has its wrongs righted, and we can once again celebrate together and dance in the streets and have a wonderful time. As Peter Van Runt says, we can all go to the pub and have a beer together, or whatever we like to drink. I don't like beer personally, but anyway, we're going to be able to celebrate, and I don't think that that's too far off. I think that's coming, and we're going to see a lot of it happening, I believe, this year. I certainly hope so. Anyway, thank you for listening again to my analysis of what's going on in the world. It's really interesting, and I think it will continue to be interesting, even more so as more of us awaken. Again, thank you. Namaste.